people who've had intimate meetups through Craigslist. What's your weirdest experience? Story 1. So I once met up with a crazy chick from Craigslist. Seriously, this woman was out of her mind. I was in Tucson, Arizona, trying to get my life together, and I thought I'd try to make some new friends, so I posted in the strictly platonic section. I laid out who I was and mentioned I was looking for a friend or two. After a few days, I got some responses, and everything seemed cool. Then, around the fourth reply, an attractive woman messaged me. She was curvy but not fat, so she was definitely my type. Since it was in the platonic section, I wasn't expecting anything to happen. But we met up at the duck pond, start chatting, and things were going really well, too well. I wasn't even trying to make a move, but she was all over me, moving fast. I figured, why not? And we ended up at her place since I was crashing on my sister's couch. The moment I walked in, I noticed terrariums everywhere. Seriously, snakes everywhere. It wasn't just a few snakes. It was like a full-on snake breeding operation, like she was preparing to take over the world with minions. She could tied them all together and gone cave diving with them. My head was screaming, "Get out of here!" But my body wasn't listening. So, we did our thing, but it was honestly hard to enjoy it while keeping an eye on all the snakes around me, wondering if she was going to give them the signal to hold me down and feed me to her creepy reptile army. As I was trying to wrap it up and leave, I heard someone entering the apartment. So, I asked her, "You got a roommate?" She said, "Well, yes, sorta." That's when I started quietly slipping on my shoes and grabbing my shirt, thinking I need to bail, and then she says, No, it's not what you think." I was hoping she's going to tell me it's her brother or some relative, just so I wouldn't get any more weirded out by the Snake Queen. But nope. She says, "It's my ex. We broke up a week ago, but we're still living together." I was losing it, thinking it's time to make a run for it, but then this massive lumberjack-looking guy walks into the room. This guy's built like a brick wall. I am standing there in my boxers and my shirt hanging off my shoulder, not sure what to do. He just strolls right past me and into the bathroom while I am frozen in fear. A few seconds later, he comes out with something behind his back, and I am sure it's over. I am about to bolt for the window when he looks at me and says, "Hey, dude." I barely managed to stammer, "Hey." At this point, the chick is freaking out about her snakes like, "Don't hurt my babies, Chad. Be careful in here." And then the guy pulls a metal curtain rod from behind his back. I booked it. I was running for the window, pants still around my ankles, trying to crawl out. Just as I was falling out into the yard, he swings that curtain rod and cracks it right over my rear. I threw my shoes on and pulled up my pants faster than Captain Falcon. I was jumping fences and running until I had no idea where I was or how long I had been running. I ended up at a payphone, called my sister, and had her pick me up. Never ever using Craigslist to meet people again. So, I got spanked by a lumberjack with a metal rod while escaping the clutches of an evil snake queen after a date at the duck pond. Screw Craigslist. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. A fraternity brother of mine once bragged about meeting with women he met on Craigslist. One time, he told me about an encounter where a girl gave him an address, and when he showed up, the front door was unlocked. He went inside and ended up receiving blowy in total darkness. He said he got done and just left without ever turning on a light. Naturally, I asked him how he was so sure it wasn't a guy. His answer, "She had long hair, I felt it." I pointed out, "You know guys can have long hair too, right?" That clearly hadn't occurred to him before because he immediately got defensive and insisted it was a girl. But from that moment on, it was obvious I'd planted a seed of doubt. I'm not sure if he still has random Craigslist hookups, but I've never let him live down what we now jokingly call the Ladyman incident. Story 3. I've got a few stories, but this one definitely takes the cake. I replied to a casual encounters ad where the woman said she was looking for some low-key fun, hang out, hook up, no strings, pretty standard. Her place was in a not-so-great part of town, but not sketchy enough to turn me around, so I went for it. We chilled on her bed for a bit to ease the nerves. She admitted, "I've never done anything like this before," and since I hadn't either, we both laughed it off and started messing around. Afterwards, we were just lying there, catching our breath, when I started getting dressed and she casually dropped this line. "So, could I maybe get, like, $40 for that?" I was stunned. Either I just slept with a very bold woman trying to finesse some quick cash, or the world's least strategic S-worker. To play it cool and not feel like a total jerk, I told her, "Yeah, for sure, I just need to hit the ATM real quick." Pro tip: never carry cash for exactly this reason. I left, and since she only had my email and not my number, she kept sending messages asking where I was. I never responded, just went home, crashed, and tried to mentally file the whole thing under life lessons. Story 4. This happened back in February while I was in Texas for work. I am normally based in North Dakota. For whatever reason, I decided to check out Craigslist, even though I'd never used it before. I stumbled across a post in the casual encounters section. The woman was looking for a friend with benefits, someone tall, skinny, and into nerdy stuff, which sounded like a pretty accurate description of me. I sent her a photo, and she responded with a picture of her face. We ended up talking on the phone for about an hour. She seemed cool, so after grabbing some rubbers, I headed to her place. When she opened the door, it was clear she didn't look like the picture she had sent. She was significantly heavier, and the resemblance was pretty far off. But before I could even fully process that, she leaned in and started kissing me without saying a word. I kind of just went with it. Things escalated quickly, and let's just say the encounter itself was messy. At one point, she was on my face in a way that felt awkward rather than passionate. I was managing to go along with it until she turned, and I saw something I wasn't prepared for: an extremely hairy backside, like full-on vintage corno levels. The front was at least groomed a bit, but the contrast caught me off guard. Afterwards, I told her I had to get going early for work and left. I went back to my hotel, showered, and went to sleep. I didn't bring my phone to work the next day, and when I got back, I saw 35 missed calls and a few voicemails, 3 of which were her crying non-stop for 2 full minutes. I never called her back. Overall, it was a weird, uncomfortable experience, and not something I'd recommend if you value your peace of mind or personal standards. Story 5. I am a Brit living in the US, and one night, feeling especially lonely, I found myself browsing Craigslist. Somehow, I ended up in the casual encounters section and started chatting with a woman. We exchanged photos. She looked pretty decent, so we arranged to meet. When I walked up to her car, it was immediately obvious she looked nothing like her pictures. We're talking about a solid 100 pounds difference. As we rolled up to a red light, I seriously considered jumping out and making a run for it. But I figured, sod it, I am already here, and just went through with it. Wrapped things up as quickly as possible, and to her credit, she even gave me a ride back home. Screw Craigslist. Story 6. A rich guy mistook me for an S-worker. A little background first. I had recently broken up with a long-term boyfriend, and I was 27, juggling a busy work and school schedule. I was feeling horny, bored with dating, and just wanted something casual. So I posted an ad on Craigslist's casual encounters section looking for a no-strings-attached fling. The ad was pretty clever, if I do say so myself, and it got some nice replies. I am a cute, relatively intelligent woman, and I was hoping to find someone who was as busy as me, someone who'd enjoy having fun, safe, hot banging without all the drama or expectations. Anyway, I ended up meeting 2 men. One was a very attractive doctor with no personality, and the other is the subject of this story. We'll call him Matthew. He responded to my ad cautiously, and right away I could tell he was intelligent and seemed like a normal guy. He refused to send a picture, but the way he declined made me feel like he was more focused on gauging my character than hiding anything from me. We decided to meet in Central Park, which was near his apartment. When I met him, I quickly realized he'd been hiding the fact that he was overweight and probably older than he'd let on. Neither of those things bothered me enough to walk away, though. He was well-groomed, polite, confident, and had a great sense of humor, all pretty sexy qualities. So I figured I'd see where this casual encounter would lead. He suggested we share some champagne and a joint at his place. I figured that was a pretty clear signal, and things would probably lead to being intimate, so I agreed. He walked us across the street to his building, and if you know New York City, you know the buildings around Central Park are incredibly upscale. This building was one of the fanciest. I wasn't used to that kind of luxury, and walking inside made my heart skip a beat. And it wasn't just any apartment. Matthew lived on the top floor, in a gorgeous penthouse with balconies that overlooked the park and the city. It was stunning. Matthew rolled an amazing joint, opened the champagne, and we spent a while on the balcony, talking and watching the city. He seemed defensive about his appearance, particularly his weight, and it felt like he was trying to prove something. That turned me off a bit, but I still enjoyed the view and the conversation. After a while, we went inside, and he put on Cruel Intentions, a questionable choice, but I figured he was just trying to set the mood. When I wasn't feeling it, he started mocking the movie, which lightened things up. After some time, the effects of the alcohol kicked in, and we ended up doing it on his massive bed, which was easily twice the size of my entire apartment. It was decent, mainly exciting because of the environment and the thrill of being with a stranger, but overall not that remarkable. What happened after, though, was strange. Matthew invited me to stay for dinner, and I agreed. It was a little awkward, but it got even more uncomfortable when he offered to pay me for the time we spent together. At the time, I was struggling financially, so the offer was tempting, but it didn't feel right. He insisted, and I eventually agreed to take $50 to cover my cab ride back to Queens. I took the money, pocketed it, and took the subway home. Story 7. This is not my personal experience, just one of many sexual encounters a friend of mine has facilitated through Craigslist. He calls Craigslist his go-to girl, and as he has no real standards, so I can see it working to his advantage. According to him, he answered one of those couples seeking third posts, the one where a husband and wife are looking to spice things up with someone new. He figured, why not? Well, he shows up, and it's a woman in her early 30s and a man in his 50s who obviously has a bit of money. The house was pretty big, nice interior, even a billiard room with a snooker table. They greet him, have a couple bottles of wine together, then start to get busy. Now this is where things start to deviate. The wife started getting ready slowly and deliberately, clearly enjoying the attention, but the husband didn't join in. Instead, he settled into a plush armchair with a fresh glass of wine and simply said, with a calm, almost amused tone, "Go ahead, let her enjoy herself." That was it. He just watched. According to my friend, things got intense pretty fast. The wife was assertive and playful and made it clear that she knew exactly what she wanted. They ended up doing it not once, but 2 or 3 times, while the husband remained seated nearby, never intervening, just sipping his drink and watching with a smile on his face. Story 8. I was 19, shy and awkward, still a virgin. When a girl with a shy smile responded to my messages, I felt like I had won the lottery. I'd been looking through the casual encounters section for a while, feeling bored, and her profile stood out to me. Her ad was clear, just looking for a casual encounter, but in my inexperienced head, I was already imagining a future together. I made my way to her apartment, which was in a rundown building with a few questionable characters hanging around. But none of that mattered. In my mind, I was about to meet the love of my life. I knocked on her door, holding some flowers that, to be honest, were a bit wilted by the time I got there. She opened the door and smiled, just like in her pictures. "Hi," she said, her voice soft. She looked embarrassed. I stepped inside, handing her the flowers, and immediately noticed the state of the place. It was clearly not well maintained, mold on the walls, old furniture, but I was too excited to care. I had come for something, and I was determined to make it happen. "Thanks," she said, her voice trailing off, and there was a long, awkward silence. We were both clearly out of our element, and I felt the tension growing. "So, do you want to?" I asked, unsure how to even phrase it. She hesitated for a moment, looking at the floor. "Can you wait a second? I need to, do something." I sat down on the couch, which puffed out dust when I did. It felt like an eternity, but eventually she came back. Something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't quite as they seemed. Then I heard voices through the thin walls. "He's just a kid," I heard a woman's voice say, filled with concern. "What if something happens to him?" A man's voice answered, almost angrily, "We don't have a choice. We need to do this." It became clear to me then that I wasn't here for a simple fun time. I was part of something much bigger. My thoughts were interrupted when Jen came back into the room, giving me that same shy smile, but this time it felt different. "Look," she said, "I think you should go. This was a mistake." I felt a rush of confusion and hurt. "What happened? I thought we were going to be together." She shook her head. "I never said that. Please don't make this harder." She went on to explain that her mother needed a kidney transplant, and with the waiting list being so long, they were considering taking mine. I was stunned, not knowing how to react. "I thought you liked me." I stammered. "I do," she said, "but sometimes we do things out of desperation. This isn't about us, it's about my mom's survival." It took me a moment to process everything. Despite the shock and anger, something in me decided that I couldn't just walk away. "I will do it," I said. "I will donate my kidney." Jen and her brother were surprised, but I knew what I had to do. A few weeks later, I went through with the transplant, and her mother lived for several more years. In the end, Jen called me again, and we started seeing each other for real. A few months later, we got married. It's been 6 years now, and we have a beautiful daughter. Every time I look at her, I see the same shy smile her mother had. Story 9. I've met a few women through Craigslist casual encounters. The first was a woman I don't even know the name of. She was a black woman in her late 20s with a little extra weight. I was a 20-year-old white guy at the time, feeling pretty confident. I sat her down on her couch, we talked for a bit, and I offered her a massage, which she reluctantly accepted. Things heated up after a while, and she asked if I'd mind if she filmed. I didn't care, so I agreed. We ended up doing it in her living room for a while. Then I awkwardly got dressed and left, without asking for her name or number. Looking back, I can tell she was pretty sad, and I sometimes wish I'd asked if she was okay, or if she needed someone to talk to. Maybe I could have helped. But I guess I've grown since then. The second woman I met was a 34-year-old married woman with 2 kids. She was black, and honestly, I didn't even know she had a husband or children when we first met. I was nervous before she showed up. I even started worrying about her showing up with someone else, or if she would look nothing like her picture. But when she arrived, she was stunning, and she was alone. So, I let her in. We started with some small talk, and eventually I asked, "Why is someone like you on Craigslist?" pointing out her small waist, cute face, and big fake chesticles. She explained she was married, but her husband was a businessman who traveled and was gone for weeks at a time. She was just lonely. I kissed her, and she responded eagerly. We ended up having hours of passion, and I could tell she hadn't been intimate in a while. We had to take things slow, with plenty of breaks in between. We saw each other a few more times. Afterward, we would cuddle, kiss, and talk for just as long as we banged. We even went out for dinner once. At one point, she asked me if I had feelings for her, and I admitted I was attracted to her, but I had suppressed any romantic feelings because of the situation. I think after that, she felt guilty, and we didn't see each other again. Story 10. I don't want to go into too much detail unless asked, but I want to share a part of my past. For a few years, I engaged in a lot of online hookups. I used several websites, with Craigslist being my primary platform. Some people might label it as addiction or promiscuity, but the truth is, it was something I did often. Growing up, the only attention I received from my father was abusive, and my mother didn't protect me from that. Because of this, I developed a lot of issues, especially when it comes to self-worth, self-esteem, and self-respect. When I left home and went to a good university, I initially struggled after a breakup with my first boyfriend. My behavior quickly escalated after that. I started meeting up with people online, and I would prioritize these encounters over schoolwork. I would often post ads and sometimes get over 200 responses within hours. I could afford to be picky and usually deleted my ads once I made a choice. I ended up doing it with a wide variety of people, including professors, married men, and even people with strange fantasies. Some encounters were out of my comfort zone, and I did things because I felt like I had to. There were times when I was scared for my safety, having been held against my will, punched, and even left in dangerous situations. I never used protection because I learned that people were more interested if I didn't. I would ask if they were clean, but otherwise took their word for it. I let anyone do what they wanted. I was reckless, almost as if I didn't care if I lived or died. Between 2009 and 2011, I estimate I did it with over 200 men. I honestly lost count after a while. Today, I am a much different person. I've been working on the deeper issues that led to my past behavior. I am focused on meeting people with shared intellectual interests, and I am in no rush when it comes to intimacy. I recently had a full STD panel, and the only result was a minor bacterial infection, which I was able to treat. I often reflect on how fortunate I am that I never contracted HIV or herpes or ended up pregnant. I am grateful that I made it through those dangerous situations and that I am here today working towards becoming a better person. Story 11. I met my last girlfriend through a Craigslist furniture for sale ad. I had just moved into a bigger place and was looking for theater seating for my entertainment room. After browsing a bit, I came across some chairs I really liked, traded a few emails with the seller, and made the 45-minute drive to pick them up. The seller turned out to be this gorgeous woman who mentioned she originally bought the chairs for her ex. Up until the moment I loaded them into my truck, everything felt like your typical buy and sell exchange. But just as I was about to leave, I had this thought, you may only pass this way once. So kind of nervously, I asked if there were any good sushi spots nearby. I was craving some. She pointed me to a local place, and I took a chance and asked if she'd like to join me. Turns out, she was hungry too and said yes. The rest, as they say, was history. We always got a kick out of telling people we met through a Craigslist ad just to see their reactions before diving into the full story. Story 12. Straight guy here. I had one successful Craigslist hookup back in the day. I kept my message simple and honest, just described myself, what I was looking for, and tried not to come off as a creep. I was also active on OkCupid at the time, so I had some practice with that kind of thing. She replied, and we had a decent little back and forth about why we were both even on Craigslist in the first place. Eventually, we exchanged numbers and started texting. We messaged on and off for about a week before making plans to meet. We had traded a few pictures not verified via call or anything, but I figured she seemed real enough. She wasn't model tier, but neither was I, and honestly, we seemed like a solid match for what we were both after. We met up at a Starbucks, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. She was a bit cuter in person and easy to talk to. We chatted about jobs, pets, and the usual stuff over coffee. Eventually, I followed her back to her place. Once we were there, we smoked a bowl, sat on the couch, and watched an episode of something. I don't even remember what. I was kind of overthinking how to make the move from chill conversation to, well, the reason we were both there. Then she just stood up and asked, "Are we doing this?" And we did. Nothing wild, just normal, safe, mutual stuff. Afterwards, she looked over and said, "You don't have to hang out longer than you want to." I thanked her, told her I had other plans, and left. We never spoke again. Story 13. I was in Phoenix for a bit and ended up meeting with an older woman. She was around 50. I was about 35 at the time. She clearly had a serious drinking habit, which became obvious when she gave me totally messed up directions to her place because she was so drunk. Eventually, I figured it out and made it there. Despite everything, she actually had a great body and was kind of attractive. We hung out, had some drinks, and eventually things got physical. She was wild, open to pretty much anything. The second time we met up, she was glued to her phone playing online video poker, still drinking heavily as usual. Weirdest part? Random guys kept sending her unsolicited pictures through the game chat that threw me off. At one point, I noticed how dry her feet were, especially her heels, and that's always been a major turnoff for me. I offered to put some lotion on them, just trying to be nice. Right after I did, she suddenly told me I had to leave. I called her a few times after that, but she never picked up. That was the last I saw of her. Oh, and I almost forgot. The first night I was there, she got so blackout drunk she slipped in the bathroom and fell hard. But instead of reacting, she just stood up like it never happened and kept going. It was wild. Say what you will, she was intense, but she was really good in bed. Story 14. I am a 23-year-old woman, and I've used Craigslist to hook up a few times. I've had 2 one-night stands from it, and a third turned into an ongoing friends with benefits situation, which is still happening. I found that the key to success is being completely honest in my ad. I use good grammar and spelling, make sure to clearly state what I am looking for, and never lie about my appearance. Here's how it usually goes. I post my ad, then receive anywhere between 200 to 300 emails. I spend a few hours going through them, deleting the ones that don't meet my criteria, and then I go back through the ones that passed the first round. I look at pictures and see which ones I'd actually consider meeting and respond to those to get to know them a little better. The ones who actually want to chat go higher up the list. The ones who just send messages like, "So when we gonna meet for banging?" get ignored. Out of the 200 to 300 emails, I usually find 1 or 2 men who I'd actually meet in person. We then set a date to meet in a public place during daylight hours for a few reasons. 1. We can see each other in person and judge the real attraction instead of just relying on photos, which can be misleading. 2. We get to talk, and I can read his body language to see how he interacts with me. It's important to know if he seems normal or if I am dealing with a potential axe murderer. 3. After the meeting, we part ways. This takes the pressure off. If either of us feels uncomfortable, we can just call or email and let the other know without feeling obligated to go through with anything. If the first meeting goes well, we set up a second meeting to actually do it. Before that, we usually text a few days to discuss what we like or don't like in the bedroom, what's acceptable, etc. Then, if everything aligns, we bang. Story 15. A few years ago, I posted an ad on Craigslist in the personal section, and it ended up being one of the more memorable experiences of my life. The reason I posted it was simple. I had a free plane ticket and no idea where to go. A family member who had lived in Chicago for a while recommended it, saying they really loved the city, so I decided to book the flight. On a whim, I put up an ad looking for a local tour guide, and to my surprise, I only got one response. That response came from a woman who turned out to be amazing. We hit it off right away over the phone. At the time, I was living in Atlanta, so we spent months talking, getting to know each other, and developing a real connection. Then, during a trip to visit family in Pittsburgh, it turned out she was passing through the city, so we met up in person. Our connection grew even stronger, and by the time my trip to Chicago came around, we had a full itinerary planned. I am the type of traveler who loves being a tourist, so she took me to all the iconic museums and showed me all the hidden gems Chicago had to offer. We had an incredible time, and by the end of my visit, we had started a relationship that lasted nearly 3 years. Eventually, I moved back to Pittsburgh for work, and while we tried to make things work, we realized we couldn't find a solution. She wasn't keen on moving to Pittsburgh, and I wasn't ready to settle in Chicago. The distance and stress took its toll, and we ended things. She's married now, and I hope she's happy. We're no longer in touch, but I look back on that time fondly. Since then, I've dated a few more people through Craigslist, and I am still friends with some of them. But that first Chicago experience? That one stands out as the most interesting. Story 16. A few months ago, I was in a really bad place in my relationship, which had been going on for 3 years. I made a poor decision, one I now regret, to post an ad on Craigslist offering to pay a girl for a favor. To my surprise, a beautiful girl reached out saying she would do it. We exchanged texts to talk about why I made the post and what led her to respond. I soon learned that she was also in a bad relationship and was struggling with her own life choices. She had been looking for a job for a while and thought this might be an easier option. As we talked more, we drifted off topic and started having a real conversation. We met up soon after, expecting to follow through with what we originally planned, but neither of us could do it. It felt awkward because, to our surprise, we actually liked each other. We ended up talking for over 4 hours. Eventually, we both ended our relationships, and with each other's support, we've both made huge strides in our lives in just a few months. Now we're engaged and planning to marry in October. Believe it or not, this is a true story, and it's honestly been the best thing that's ever happened to me. Even though it started in an unconventional way, I can genuinely say that this experience has been the best of my life. Story 17. I met an ex-boyfriend on Craigslist, but it wasn't for a hookup. I had posted in the strictly platonic section looking for friendship, and he replied. He was 21 and I was 26. We emailed back and forth for a while and eventually started chatting on Gmail. About a month later, I was going out with friends to a local rock bar club and he wanted to join. We met there and he kissed me on the patio of the bar. But that was it. I was dating other people at the time, but he was persistent and I decided to give him a chance. We went on to have what was mostly a very happy relationship. 6 months later, we moved in together and we lived together for 2 years. He often talked about our future, and 2 years into our relationship, he told me he was looking for an engagement ring for me. I decided that once he found one and proposed, I'd say yes. But a few months later, out of nowhere, he started talking about needing space, feeling confused, and wanting to move out to figure out what he really needed. It made no sense. I was upset and couldn't sleep. At 1 a.m., I heard his phone go off with a text message. I was curious, so for the first time, I looked through his phone. I found out he had been cheating on me. Not only were they sleeping together, but there were also all these emotional messages, most of them from him to her. She seemed more hesitant. I ended the relationship immediately. He moved out, and I found out he wanted to spend a month trying to make her his girlfriend while keeping me as his backup in case it didn't work out. He and this girl had a tumultuous on-again, off-again thing for about a month and a half. He told everyone she was a bish, and she told everyone he was crazy. 2 months later, he came back, sobbing, holding a cheesecake, and begging me to take him back. It was incredibly satisfying to tell him no, hell no, never again. But to have it happen so suddenly, with no warning, when I thought we were happy and on our way to marriage, really traumatized me. The pain I felt was unlike anything I had ever experienced, and it threw my life into chaos for years after. Story 18. I am a straight woman sharing my experiences here. Between the ages of 19 and 22, I had several hookups through Craigslist during a phase of heightened hormones. Some were better than others, but none were awful, though I did have a few bad experiences with OkCupid. Most people I met through Craigslist were decent, though I feel a little guilty using Craigslist as a straight woman, knowing it's easier for me than for straight men. I liked using Craigslist because, 1, I could often find exactly what I was looking for. Like one time when I wanted to hook up with someone with a specific political view, or 2, I knew it was very likely I'd get laid. Many times I was visiting different cities and just wanted some company, and banging was the easiest way to get it. I could post an ad and get 40 to 60 replies in the first hour, though realistically I only responded to about 10% of them, which made me feel a little bad but also kind of cool. Many of my Craigslist hookups turned into friends, or at least repeat encounters. They were all pretty respectful, some more than others, but none of them were bad experiences. The worst I had was boring, unremarkable bang. Here are a few memorable ones. Les Sovereigntists. The first time I used Craigslist for intimate time, I wanted to meet up with someone of a different political belief to challenge my views. I got some interesting responses. One guy, after we hooked up, admitted he didn't actually support the ideology I was after, but I didn't mind. We ended up doing it a few more times and even went on a couple of dates. Another guy from the same search met me at a bar, and we had drinks before heading back to mine. On the way, he awkwardly asked, "Do you have any rubbers?" I was a bit stunned. I had a good time with him though, but he didn't return my calls after that. Christmas goodies. Visiting my family in a small town over Christmas, I was bored and irritated from not having physical contact in weeks. I posted an ad looking for a jock to meet up with, just wanting someone attractive with a good body, without worrying too much about personality. I met a good-looking hockey player, smoked a joint with him, and we had fun on his couch. Afterward, we hung out, had a beer, and then I asked if he wanted another round, which he happily agreed to. It was fun, but we both had other plans, so I drove back to my parents' house. The Economist. Sometimes I enjoy being with older men. A 22-year-old might be able to go hard, but a man in his 50s knows a few tricks and really appreciates a younger woman. I met one such man on Craigslist. He was an amateur photographer, and I was a model. We got along well during the shoot, hung out afterward, and ended up doing it. He even took me to dinner the next day, and we both knew it was a short-term fling since we were both in town for the summer. It turned out to be one of the most respectful, fulfilling encounters I'd had at the time. I also briefly met up with a professor in his 60s, though that didn't go far because he was married, and I wasn't sure about that dynamic. The MM4W. I've always had fantasies involving multiple men. I'd browse Craigslist MM4W section just to imagine being in 3 scores or larger groups. One day, I saw an ad for a party that promised just that. I'd been to swapsters clubs before, but I preferred more intimate settings, so I decided to give this party a try. I was nervous, but the experience was amazing. It turned out to be more fun than I imagined, and I ended up going to several parties with the same group. I casually dated a few of the men I met there, and it was great knowing everyone was on the same page about being open to casual encounters. There were a few creepers, but the majority of guys were cool and respectful. I had a great time and ended up going to several more parties with them. Story 19. When I was 22, I went through a bisexual phase. I am happily married to my husband now, and we've been together for 2 years. I put up an ad online, and within a week, I had a ton of messages, mostly from creepy people or obvious fakes. After 2 weeks, I was about to remove the listing when I finally received a legitimate reply. The woman was interested in meeting up, and I agreed to it quickly. Looking back, I realize how careless and naive I was, but I am thankful everything turned out okay. After exchanging phone numbers, we set plans for me to come over to her apartment the following Friday night. I was anxious in the days leading up to it, but also excited. We exchanged pictures, and I was pretty much already feeling the effects of the anticipation by Wednesday. Looking back, I was foolish and reckless, but I was hormonal and desperate at the time. A friend offered to drop me off and even tried to talk me out of it once we reached the apartment complex. But I was determined to go through with it. The complex wasn't in the best neighborhood, but it wasn't terrible either. I waited outside nervously, and instead of buzzing her door, I called her. I heard footsteps approaching and realized it was actually happening. I panicked briefly, but when she opened the door, my anxiety melted away. She was shorter than I expected, only reaching my shoulders, but she was cute and had a nice figure. She smiled, stepped aside, and invited me in. Her apartment was cozy but nothing extraordinary. She offered me some wine, which I quickly accepted. I hated every sip, but I knew each drink would bring me closer to being with her. After several glasses, we ended up sitting next to each other on the couch. By then, I could feel how excited I was and excused myself to the bathroom to regain my composure. When I returned, she was waiting outside. To make a long story short, we kissed, and the rest followed. It was the first and last time I was with a woman, but I don't regret it. Afterward, things got interesting. We crashed in her bed for a little while, and I woke up realizing that maybe I wasn't actually a lesbian after all. My friend picked me up, and I stayed at her place. The next morning, I found a voicemail from the woman thanking me for the time we spent together and asking if I wanted to hang out again. I told her it was fun but lied, saying I was only in town visiting family, and we ended contact after that. While I regret being so reckless, it was an eye-opening experience that helped shape who I am today. I met my husband 6 months later, and we've been in a committed relationship since then. Edit to give more context, I thought at the time that I would enjoy being with a woman as much as a man, but afterward, I realized some fantasies are better left fantasies. I was more interested in the taboo aspect than the actual experience itself. I didn't want to mislead anyone, so I decided this would be my first and last encounter like this. I still feel curious from time to time, but my husband and I have found other ways to handle those feelings. If there's one piece of advice I'd give about Craigslist, it's to be careful. Beneath the spam and creepy messages, there are some genuine people looking for fun. Try to confirm the person's authenticity as best you can, and don't ignore any bad feelings or instincts you might have going into the experience. Always let a friend know where you are and what you're doing and have a plan for how to leave if necessary. This may seem like common sense, but I got so caught up in getting an actual reply from someone that I lost track of some of my better judgment. Think with your head, not just your hormones. Story 20. Craigslist casual encounters can be absolutely fantastic if you know how to use them. You need to understand that if you're looking to get laid, it's important to know the demographics of an easy hookup. I am going to say some blunt things here, and I am not claiming to be some flawless expert, but I can tell you exactly how I found success multiple times through casual encounters. First off, I am not strictly a chubby chaser, but I have no problem with a woman who's got some curves, even if she's pretty chubby or obese. There's definitely a social stigma around dating or sleeping with a plus-size woman, which I think is complete nonsense. But if you look at it analytically, it's fair to say that curvier women are often an underserved market. I make it clear that I am extremely BBW friendly, and I genuinely am. Honestly, some of the best time I've ever had has been with women in the 250 pounds and up range. Just because a woman has a tummy doesn't mean she's some unhygienic stereotype. There are plenty of gorgeous, bigger women out there who take great care of themselves and absolutely know how to have a good time. My second key demographic was women who were both 1. Over 30 years old, and 2. In relationships where their needs were going unmet. This included quite a few married women. During my time on Craigslist, I was in my mid-20s, tall, a bit overweight, with a stomach, but otherwise fairly handsome, a great conversationalist, and an even better listener. Do you know what happens when you present yourself to a 37-year-old woman who hasn't had a satisfying experience in 6 years because she gained 40 pounds after having 2 kids and is now stuck with an unappreciative husband? Do you know what a few flirty texts or emails, a happy hour drink before she has to go home and be mom, and one slow, passionate kiss can do to someone like that? I once had a woman tell me that when I kissed her after we met, it was the first time she'd had a real lip-to-lip kiss in over a decade, because once she got married, her husband just stopped showing her any kind of affection. I could go on and on with examples and everything I've learned. If anyone's actually interested, let me know, and I'd be happy to share more. Honestly, I've never really talked about any of this before, not even with my closest friends. None of them have any idea how active I really was on casual encounters. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.